Just gonna give our folks a few more moments to join on the call. I know we're waiting for the rest of our colleagues to join today's call, but I want to respect everyone's time, so we are going to go ahead and get started. As a reminder, today's call is being recorded and a YouTube link will be sent out shortly after the call. Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank you first and foremost for making yourselves available to talk about some emerging topics in managing your VISTA programs. I know that you all are on a limited time and a very busy schedule, so I appreciate you for joining the call this morning. I just want to go over a couple of our agenda items. We're going to be talking about the new CEO. We're really excited about that. Some Florida priorities, advisory councils, best practices for recruitment, as we do have some upcoming PSO and VMO. We'll talk about those deadlines. Just a reminder about summer associates, as well as the exciting, ever exciting AmeriCorps Week and even more exciting National Service Day of Recognition. So those are some of the items that we'll be diving in today. If you are just joining the call, please make sure to mute your line by pressing *6. We love background music, but only in the elevator. So we want to make sure that you press *6 to mute your line. It is not enough to just press the mute button on your phone, because in the event you have to place the call on hold, we will be blessed with this elevator music. So please *6 to mute and then *6 to unmute if you have a question. So first things first, I am very excited to share with you all that we now have a new CEO. Barbara Stewart was unanimously confirmed as our Chief Executive Officer on February 7th. Just to give you all a little bit of background about Barbara in case you did not receive the Gov Delivery or haven't had a chance to read it, she earned her BA from Northwestern University as well as a Master's in Management from the Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University. She has more than 25 years of experience in the private, public, and the nonprofit sector. She brings strong management skills, operations experience, and a passion for service for her role at CNCS. She has extensive bipartisan experience working with elected officials at both the federal, state, as well as the local level. She's served on policy and management roles for the Illinois governor, as well as 2 lieutenant governors. She's led the Chicago Public Affairs practice at Fleischman Hillard and was on the government relations staff of Commonwealth Edison Corporation, now Exelon Corporation. As a consultant, a board member, and a volunteer, she has spent many years helping nonprofits strengthen their governance, operations, and sustainability. She brings firsthand experience as a grant maker, having many years helping nonprofits strengthen their governance, operations, and sustainability. She founded and led the Bo Stewart Foundation, supports organizations that expand economic opportunity through education, training, and work, And from a young age, she's volunteered in her community and has served on the boards of a wide range of civic, charitable, and nonprofit organizations. I hope you all are as excited and enthusiastic about this new addition to our leadership. We had a brief conversation with our new CEO, and I can tell you the energy that you read about her comes through in conversations with her and what she brings to the agency. So look forward to great things ahead as we welcome our new CEO. So the next thing we want to talk about, and I know some of you are already aware of our emerging priorities within the state, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page with the major issues facing our state. And we are all also aware of how we want to make sure national service resources are allocated. Number one is the opioid epidemic. I think I talked to you all last summer as well as the fall about the status of the opioid epidemic in our state. Florida remains to be fourth in the entire nation as it relates to the opioid epidemic. And what's affecting Florida is affecting all of us. So we want to make sure that we are all on board in some form or fashion as it relates to this particular issue area. I don't want people to be overwhelmed about how they engage in the fight against the opioid epidemic. CNCS has put out some great resources. As always, the state office is trying to work with you all to figure out how to be engaged in this particular area. But I can tell you, since many of you have a youth focus or mentoring and education focus, that prevention is the name of the game. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So that's a space that most of us already live in. And we can be unique and innovative in how we enter into this space and help the youth that we're engaging build character and resilience so that when faced with a difficult decision, they make the right one. The next thing, and this kind of piggybacks off of what I just said about the spaces we're already in, is human trafficking. Just a not so fun fact, I read the other day, Orlando has the third highest number of hotline calls for human trafficking reporting. Okay, the governor has a task force on both human trafficking and the opioid epidemic. And I want to kind of clear up some myths around this particular area, because a lot of what our community sometimes misconstrues as human trafficking, or I don't want to say misconstrues or focuses on rather, is human trafficking in the form of labor, human trafficking in the form of misuse of illegal immigrants. That does fall under the category, but what I want you all to understand and be very keen and aware of is that every youth, particularly low-income youth, women in particular, are vulnerable and susceptible to becoming victims of human trafficking. So regardless of your social status, regardless of your income, regardless of your race, your gender, they are susceptible. But since I'm speaking to our VISTA supervisors, particularly the youth and the families that you all are fighting so hard to support are the most vulnerable. So this is another opportunity for us to enter into this space. I want you all to stay tuned as we are working here at the state office to help give you resources and ideas in how to enter into this space. But at the very least, begin doing your own research in your catchment areas. Begin talking to your partners. Begin talking to your stakeholders and figuring out how you can use the AmeriCorps VISTA resource to leverage and bolster, make programs more effective and more efficient in this particular fight. And I don't have to remind everyone about Hurricane Irma, as well as the recent impact of Hurricane Maria. So we are now in a disaster recovery mode, although we're always in a disaster preparedness mode, because we know that the low-income population is the most vulnerable when it comes to disaster. But we have a large task on our hand in terms of helping people recover after Irma and in terms of helping folks and families get settled in that have evacuated from Puerto Rico. The last article that I read said that we had more than 90,000 evacuees come to Florida and counting. Central Florida is home to about 44,000 of those 90,000. So that's something I want you all to keep on the radar. I want you to think about how that's affecting your stakeholders. Those of you who are in schools or working with school districts, I want you to think about the impact on the school district and where VISTA can fit in helping them to get our folks settled in, to get them acclimated to their new lives in Florida after being taken away from their homes due to this disaster. So those are our three main priorities that we're looking at right now. Not to say that we don't exist in the focus areas that we've always existed, but these are the most pressing issues affecting the state. And I'd like everyone to really dig deep and think about how they exist in each of these spaces, how their programs are affected in each of those spaces, and how you can allocate your existing AmeriCorps Vista resources to serve in these spaces, how you may need additional AmeriCorps Vista resources to serve in this space. And just another point that I want to put out there, especially for our statewide projects, we are always looking to do development, and we always want to make sure to expand our footprint within the state, particularly when it comes to North Central Florida, as well as the rural parts of the state. So if you have partners, if you have friends, if you have plans for expansion, please share that with us. We want to make sure that we are allocating the resources where they are needed, and you, alongside the rest of the nonprofit and government community in Florida, are our allies in this effort. Advisory councils. So I want to present a quick poll, and just so you all know, it's anonymous. So not everyone feel uncomfortable about answering this question. So the poll should appear in just a moment here. Remember, this is an anonymous poll. We want to make sure that everyone has the resources needed to make their projects sustainable. And in those areas where there are gaps within the portfolio, we want to address those gaps and provide you the technical assistance and support so that you all can be strong and sustainable. We don't have that many people on the chat, so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And this is actually a precursor to our next conversation regarding advisory councils, whether or not you all have advisory councils, why you need advisory councils, besides the regulations and besides the rules, but the important role that they play in helping your programs become sustainable. I see Mary Matthews from Communities and Schools of Florida has chimed in saying that she involves her site coordinators, her CISFL board members, in addition to the VISTA members. Thank you for that tip. Anyone else on the call who has an advisory council and has some best practices and tips that they'd love to share, feel free to use the chat box, and we'll even have some time to hear from some peers at the end of the call. So why advisory councils? You all will remember, our seasoned folks will remember, and for our newer folks, community empowerment is one of the pillars of VISTA. And one way that our agency ensures that you all have this particular pillar in place from conception is by the establishment of an advisory council. So advisory councils ensure that the low-income community has input into the project plan, not just in the development of the project plan, but as well as the execution of the project plan and ongoing support. We want the beneficiaries of our resources, of our efforts, and our program to be a part of the plan that uplifts them and ultimately gets them out of poverty. So the Advisory Council is one strong way that we can do that. Now, sponsors must involve the beneficiary community to achieve project sustainability. This is an important aspect, which is why it is a pillar of VISTA. We never want to force feed anyone a solution that's not going to work for them. We want individuals who we are seeking to impact to benefit, but also be a part of that benefit and feel like they had some skin in the game, so to speak, in terms of developing interventions and strategy. So that's the real theoretical aspect of why we need advisory councils. So besides the requirement, we really want to make sure that the communities are fully engaged. And some of the roles of advisory councils, they should meet on a consistent basis. Some recommendations and some of the ways that your peers have done it are on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. We've seen some advisory councils, depending on your program, that meet on a semi-annual basis. But there should be some form of structure in terms of how often they meet. We definitely want to make sure sponsoring organization staff is involved. At a minimum, the VISTA supervisor. The VISTA members should be involved to report out on successes and challenges, and as well as garner feedback. This gives them an opportunity to comment on the project, the development, the implementation of the project. And of course, this is the government, so you should always document when these meetings take place, not just for our purposes, but for the continuity of your program as well. Advisory councils play a critical role, and documenting that role goes into the history and the legacy and ultimately the sustainability of your program. To the extent practical, we expect them to assist in the planning of the continuation of the project application. We're not saying they're going to be right there writing the grant, but you need their feedback. You want to know the emerging needs, the emerging issues, the emerging challenges within the community, because that may steer your program in a whole new direction. And I want you all to look at the advisory councils as a benefit, a support, and not a burden. Those of you who have had recruitment challenges, think of the role an advisory group could play in helping you to meet your VISTA allocations and helping to onboard members who are relocating. Think of the role that an advisory council could play in helping to onboard and acclimate relocating candidates. Maybe you have someone from the real estate association who sits on your advisory council. Maybe you have someone from law enforcement, and we all know law enforcement is fully integrated and engaged in our communities all over. Maybe you have them sit on the advisory council. Maybe you have a youth. A lot of your programs serve youth. Maybe you have youth sit on your advisory councils. Members of the faith-based community, members of the private sector sit on your advisory council. At a minimum, you definitely want the community being impacted by your program to be on that council, whether it's representatives of those communities or individuals from those communities themselves. But we want everyone to have a game plan, not only for developing, if you don't already have one, but enhancing and really engaging your advisory councils. You can think of an advisory council as the foundation of your project. something that's really going to bolster you. So we'll be talking more about this in the coming months. You'll be hearing more from your program officers in terms of how well your advisory councils are doing. If you have an advisory council, what resources or tools that are needed to help you engage or develop an advisory council. So keep this on the radar because we'll be talking about this a bit more extensively in the coming months. And I see Mary Matthews has graciously chimed in on the chat box saying, we always get input for our application. Each subsite has to predict their own performance measures based on their community need. I want to thank you for that, Mary, because Mary manages a project that spans pretty much most of Florida. And so she is a good peer to reach out to find out how they've been able to cultivate advisory councils, how they utilize them, and what their structures entail. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about recruitment. We are in a heavy recruitment season pretty much from now until August. So we want to cover some issues that, we've seen some of you run into. For those of you who are intermediaries or those of you who have VISTA members placed at other organizations besides your own throughout the state, it's a really good idea for you to have a strong understanding of your sites and your partners, not only their background requirements, but also their culture. The norms of that particular organization. This is very critical for those intermediaries who do the first line interviewing before you send candidates to particular sites. Really understanding your partners, your programs, their screening and selection process can save you a whole lot of headache later on. One thing we want you to pay particularly close attention to, and this is for everyone, whether you have vistas just at your site or if you have vistas at partner sites. If you have an additional application process, you want that to coexist with our application process. There have been some issues within the state, and this has been on a couple of projects, where VISTA members were unable to pass background checks that were established by sites. And that's fair. We do not infringe upon your ability to have an additional layer of checks or screening, but it's very important that you all understand what those additional checks and screenings look like, what those additional applications look like, and that you're forthright with all of the applicants that are coming through the portal. And that's something you want to consider as well when it comes to timing. Okay, obviously we have cutoffs and deadlines for AmeriCorps Vista PSO recruitment. So you want to make sure that you are including your additional screening, your site's additional screening and application process when you're putting forth candidates for state office approval. We want you all to take charge of the recruitment process. Our expectation is that you meet the allocations you have requested. You all have stated the number of VISTA members you need in order to make some of your biggest goals and dreams happen, and we are here to help you do that. But we can't do that if you all are not taking charge of the recruitment process. It is an ongoing process. Sometimes it can be an arduous process for some of our larger projects. We're dealing with a human resource here, which is uncontrollable. So I want you to think about that. And I also want you to think about the competing priorities that you have in your own agencies and how that affects your ability to recruit. We really want to be proactive when it comes to recruiting our members. We want to be proactive about how we're going to make sure we meet our allocations. The state office has allocations that it has to meet as well, which is why you'll hear and see our requests to know when you plan to fill certain slots. Now, we fully understand that life happens, challenges happen, things happen, but we also expect you all to be very proactive in that process, account for the life that happens, account for the challenges that happen, constantly be improving your screening, recruitment, an onboarding process to make sure that you meet your allocations. We want you to be successful. Without members, you can't meet your performance measures. And we've got a lot of great tips, tricks, tools, and resources for you, but we definitely need you to make sure you're doing your part as well. So think about how that affects you all as project supervisors, and those who have other sites, think about what responsibilities they may need to address in order to make that happen. Another thing, while we are in the thick of recruitment season, is to communicate clearly and concisely with recruits during the interviews. Interviews are critical places to determine whether or not a person is a good fit, not just for the site, not just for your organization, but for the member. Okay, we think of national service as a two-way street. They're looking to get something out of this, as are you, as is the community. So you want to make sure you have that open-ended communication. What is your process in place for selecting a member? Do you have a process? How do you screen? These are things you want to know before you begin recruitment. And that way you can avoid some of the hiccups that come with screening and selecting members. How are you constantly improving your process after each PSO? I think we all learn a little bit as we run into challenges with our VISTA members, but how are we making sure to address what we learn? So those are things I want you all to think about. In addition to communicating clearly and concisely, make sure that you're communicating often. There is a long window with the in-person PSOs, and people tend to fall off the earth if we're not talking with them and making sure that they're getting ready, they're getting settled, they're completing the necessary forms, they're responding to emails from CNCS. Give them something to read about your community. Give them something to read in terms of the VAD. Share the application with them. Ask them questions. Get them geared up and excited for this year that they're about to embark on. And we want you to make use of the VISTA campus. We have a wonderful training team at our VISTA headquarters. There's going to be a webinar coming up on Wednesday, February 28th at 4 p.m., Getting the Right Candidates, Marketing Your Opportunity Listing. So make sure to tune into that. From what I have heard from your peers, these are some wonderful webinars, and this is just another way that our agency can support you. And I see another great comment from here, in case you all are not online or looking at the chat box. Mary, let's see, excellent. Putting additional applications and additional screening processes in your listings. There is a spot for a link if you have an additional application. You are also welcome to put that in the narrative sections of your listings. Definitely making sure, I see Mary says, must inform VISTAs of any other background checks, such as level 2 checks, which only give a pass or fail. So being very upfront with the member, especially when it comes to disclosure. And that brings me to a good point. I'm glad Mary said that. Just so everyone is clear on the phone, CNCS only conducts a sex offender check prior to placing your members and an FBI check. Understand that fingerprints are due within 30 days of a member starting. So we don't have backgrounds immediately. It is a process and it does take some time, and per the policy, that member should be accompanied until they are cleared. Whether it's through our process or if you've done an additional level 2 process, through your process. So that is another consideration you all want to look at in terms of recruitment and whether or not you or your sites require additional background checks. Oh, Mary put, also ask them if they are students. That can really dip into their time. I'm glad Mary is just chock full of peer-related advice here on the chat. That's a very good disclosure item. If you have members, and remember there are policies around VISTA members attending school. That's another item to address. Thank you for those tips, Mary. So, Since we're talking about PSO, let's talk about the next ones coming up and their deadlines. I hope everybody is wrapping up or near wrapping up your recruitment for the March 19th VMO. As a reminder, that is the member start date. So it's not 4 days after or a week after. It is that day. They are expected to report to the site on the 19th. Our deadline is February 23rd, which is tomorrow. If you are running into any hiccups and you have folks in the pipeline, please reach out to your program officer ASAP, especially if you think you are going to miss that deadline. Deadlines are imperative because, as you know, some of our candidates have citizenship issues, social security issues, as well as background issues, and that takes our office time to clear up. So that's why we have this buffer. So if you have an issue, please contact your program officer. The next PSO after, or the next VMO after, is April 16th. That deadline is March 23rd. And then we'll have an in-person pre-service orientation, May 21st through the 24th. That deadline is April 9th. And there is also a May VMO that starts on May 14th. And the deadline for that is April 20th. Please keep in mind that our preference is that if you are sending candidates to a May PSO, we prefer that they go to the in-person orientation for May. That doesn't mean you can't place people for the May 14th VMO, but our preference is that they go to the in-person PSO in May. So please consider the deadlines, work with your sites to make sure that you have everything you need in line to meet those deadlines and meet your allocation. There is a question in the chat box, thank you Shelly, about the location of the May PSO, and that will be right here in sunny Orlando, Florida. Thank you for that question, Shelly. Summer Associates, we had a webinar. Everyone here should have received the link about the webinar. We sent out guidance, so this is just a reminder that you all, everybody on this call should be a VISTA project, but you're eligible to apply for Summer Associates. That deadline is up and coming. February 26, 2008. Go big or go home. That's just my fun banter with you all to say we plan to have a robust summer program. As many of you who have looked at the guidance have seen, substance abuse prevention is the name of the game. We want to see that reflected with every program working with the youth. We have some resources and some tips and some tools. Mary Matthews from Communities and Schools of Florida has a wonderful template in terms of what she did last summer and how easy it is to engage VISTA Summer Associates in this area. So ask for what you want and we will look at our resources and allocate accordingly. If you have issues for whatever reason with that particular deadline or you run into issues with the application, please reach out to Alexia or Marianne and we will get you settled. AmeriCorps Week. I want everyone to get excited. This isn't the VISTA birthday, but this is an opportunity to kind of celebrate like it is our birthday, right? So the dates for AmeriCorps Week are March 11th through the 17th. This is the time to tell your AmeriCorps story. We have many opportunities to tell our story. In fact, we should be telling our story every single day, every opportunity that we get. But when it comes to our AmeriCorps Week, our Senior Corps Week, our National Service Days of Recognition, we want to tell it loud and we want to tell it proud. So I want you all to think about some unique, creative, and innovative ways to get your members engaged, whether it's just the promotion of AmeriCorps, whether it's inviting people for an open house to learn about your AmeriCorps VISTA program, whether you're teaming up, and we're hoping you're teaming up with your fellow AmeriCorps state and national members within your particular region. We'd love to know your plans. We want you to share them with us. If you need help coming up with a plan, if you need ideas of what you can do, please reach out to us. But this is the time, now is the time to let people know what AmeriCorps is all about. In particular, what is AmeriCorps VISTA all about? What are your projects doing within the community? I mean, this could be as simple as sending a letter to your local elected officials, sending a letter to the Chamber of Commerce, presenting at the Chamber of Commerce. If you haven't yet, presenting at school board meetings, city council meetings, what have you, anyone who will let you speak. Now is the time to do that, and it's also a time for your members to get really excited and really amped up about the good work that they're doing in the community. We have resources, right? We always have resources. We are a resource-heavy agency, so there's a great link with some resources for AmeriCorps Week. We'll also be sharing some additional AmeriCorps Week resources from a few years ago that I think are really good for replication. And then, of course, when you're in the thick of things, and even after or before, tag us on social media. Share with the state office. We want to hear about all the great work you're doing and the ways that you're promoting AmeriCorps in your community. So send us pictures, news clippings, invite us to events. If we're in the area, we'd love to come. Those of you who are located in Central Florida, our state office is right here. So any way that we can support and be engaged, we'd love to. We have our own social media, so we will share whatever you have. I see Mary Matthews is saying send them your newsletter. If you don't have a newsletter, maybe this is the time you can have your VISTA members develop a newsletter and talk about some of the great things they've done. So I don't want you all to think that as VISTA supervisors, this is another task for you to embark upon. This is for your members. This is for your members to think about how they can celebrate and promote the work that they've been doing and the work of national service. So let them get creative about how they'd like to promote their work within the community. And then, of course, National Service Day of Recognition. I know you all have heard about this. You've probably heard different iterations that started off being Mayor's Day, then Mayors and County Execs Day, then we invited our tribal organizations, and now we've decided, you know, this is a day for recognition for national service. We are at the 6th annual celebration. Very excited that it has come this far. Every year it has been amazing. You all work tremendously hard to engage your local elected officials, and we're asking you to engage them once more. So that will take place on April 3rd, 2018. I know one of the questions we get frequently is, do we have to have an event in honor of National Service Day of Recognition take place on that day? And the answer is no. You can do it a week before, a week after. I mean, we want to be flexible with you all and how you celebrate this particular day. Ideally, it's nice if events can take place on April 3rd, but if it works better for your community for it to be a week after or a week earlier, then have at it. We want to make sure you encourage your city, council, school board officials, your local state legislators to sign up if they have not done so. There is a link, as you can see on the screen, where you can look and see who has signed up and where they can sign up. Every elected official counts. So what does that mean? That means if you have one county commissioner, go for gold and get all of your county commissioners. Don't just get one city councilman. Go for gold and get all of your city councilmen and councilwomen. Mayors, school board members, congresswomen, senators, etc., what have you. Our goal is to engage 200 elected officials within Florida. And I don't think that's a lot. I think we could probably do even more, but we're going to definitely shoot to double what we did last year, which was 101. And kudos to you all for getting folks on board. Let's get some more folks on board this year. You all are doing tremendous work. Your VISTA members are doing tremendous work and sacrificing their time for a greater cause. And this is the time to recognize them. So let's get on board. Let's get our elected officials on board. If you notice that you have folks who have already signed up and you're not seeing their name on the list, please feel free to send an email to Heba George in our office. That's hgeorge@cns.gov. And again, Don't forget to share your plans with us, okay? We want to promote you. Let us know how best we can support you. Let us know how we can share your information on social media. Tag us on social media. If there are letters that you need, let us know how we can get you the resources and tools that you need to pull this off. Um, Alexia wrote, Alabama is killing us with their numbers. We're in a competition. If anything, I know some of you have a competitive spirit. We have 67 counties, and I'm not even going to count all the cities. So let's go big or go home with National Service Day of Recognition. I know you all can do it. I trust you can do it, and we're here to support you. And with that being said, that is the end of the announcements for us. If you all have any questions, comments, concerns that you'd like to address at this time, please feel free to do so. As a reminder, *6 to unmute. We also have the chat box. My wonderful team of program officers is also closely monitoring the chat box. If you're not comfortable speaking, feel free to use that. I see some typing going on.
Hey, Billy?
Yes.
This is Alexia. I just want to remind everybody, when you sign up your people for PSO, do not forget to fill out the PSO enrollment form, please.
Thank you for that reminder, Alexia.
No problem.
Okay, I see Shelly has a question. This is a great question about swag. We definitely want our members to have gear. So there is a bit of an adjustment in terms of how members will be receiving their gear. It will be sent directly to the project. We'll work with our statewide projects on how to disseminate that those particular items. I know you guys have a larger footprint than many of our other programs. And in terms of fingerprint kits, I'm very glad you brought that up, Shelly. Our goal is to ensure that you have fingerprint kits a week prior to when your members are starting. If you do not have kits a week prior to when your members are starting a particular PSO, please reach out to your program officer so we can get that to you. Members should have their kits on day one. Fingerprinting processes should be built in as a best practice into your onboarding and on-site orientation and training, and we know you can't do that without those kits. So we closely monitor the number of members that you all have brought on board or who are actually attending a PSO or a VMO, and our goal is to get those out to you a week prior. So if you don't have them, please nudge your program officer. Let's see. Mary said, thank you for the new form. Thank you all for completing the form. Let's see. Let's see. Shelly. In the past, kits were sent to our office and then I mailed to site supervisor. However, I noticed some have been sent directly to site supervisors from your office. Just want to confirm what to expect. So that's something you can actually address directly with your program officer. Sometimes kits are sent to members directly to their site depending on the timing of when they're receiving those kits. We know some site addresses change, supervisors change, and things can get lost in translation. But that is something, particularly those of you who are statewide programs, if you have a particular preference, please notify your program officer and we'll make sure to get those out accordingly. Great questions.
Hey, Billy, this is Marianne. I had something else also to add. So for summer associates, just wanted to bring to folks' attention, if people hadn't already noticed, that the dates for the first cohort of members have been updated very slightly since Monday, May 28th is Memorial Day. So for those three options, the 8, 9, and 10-week options, Everyone is going to be starting on Tuesday, May 29th, and then each respective option will just, the term of service is then 1 day later as well. We'll definitely be highlighting that more prominently after the applications come in and after we've done notifications, that is a change from the original guidance.
Thank you, Marianne.
And Billy, this is Alexia. I just wanted to let you guys know, if you sent in your site locations, the addresses, and the supervisors, we have that, and I've been trying to send the kits to that supervisor. The problem is I really have to know where that member is serving, and I don't always. So if I know that, and I know the site supervisor and the address, we will send it to the site. If that makes it easier for you.
Perfect.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Alexia. Seeing no further comments in the chat box, I'm going to give a last call for any questions, comments, or concerns. Hearing none, I want to thank you all for giving us some of your time this morning and for the amazing work that you're doing in the fight against poverty. We look forward to your members rolling in the box tomorrow. We look forward to your work on AmeriCorps Week, and we definitely look forward to your engagement of elected officials on National Service Day of Recognition. As always, we are here for you. Please utilize your program officers to be successful and conquer those performance measures. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. Goodbye.
Bye.